let's say nothing changes. Let's say that the government never accepts it. The Clarity Act never passed. We're going to have an antiquated transactional non-tokenized system because the gerontocracy has won. Okay, let's say that that's the case. Okay, and I'll accept that. Let's say that that's the case. Okay, so then this will be half the market capitalization of gold. Tell me what gold is in 10 years. I'll tell you that's where gold's 50 trillion. Bitcoin will have a $25 trillion market cap. And if you bought it here at $1 trillion, you're going to go 25 to 1 on it.
There is a strange irony unfolding in financial history. The very institutions that spent decades defining money may end up watching from the sidelines as an open-source network quietly absorbs trillions of dollars in value. Not because governments approved it, not because Wall Street gave its blessing, but because mathematics doesn't ask for permission. Anthony Scaramucci believes Bitcoin's future may be far bigger than most investors can imagine, even in the worst-case scenario. Imagine a world where Washington never passes the Clarity Act, tokenization stalls, and regulators spend another decade fighting digital assets. According to Scaramucci, Bitcoin still wins. His argument is simple. If gold reaches a $50 trillion market cap over the next decade, Bitcoin doesn't need to replace it. It only needs to become half of it. And that is where this conversation becomes impossible to ignore. Because if Bitcoin reaches a $25 trillion market capitalization, today's prices may look like a rounding error in hindsight. But before we get there, Scaramucci lays out why crypto has endured a shallow bear market, why the Clarity Act could determine the fate of tokenization in America, why institutional adoption continues to accelerate, and why artificial intelligence could become one of Bitcoin's biggest tailwinds. In today's video, we'll break down Anthony Scaramucci's complete thesis from the 4-year cycle and ETF demand to the battle for crypto regulation, the rise of AI-powered economies, and why he believes Bitcoin could eventually reach 7 figures. If you enjoy these deep dives into Bitcoin, macroeconomics, and the future of money, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications, and let us know in the comments, will Bitcoin hit $1 million before 2036?
Well, we had a growing economy. Most things were moving gradually upward, and inflation was moving gradually downward. And then Donald Trump came into office about 18, 19 months ago and kicked over the economic progress by putting the tariffs on. And then he added the forever war in Iraq. And so the combination of those two things have upset the apple cart. And so now we have the specter of near-term inflation, which has created some uncertainty. We have a specter of energy supply depletion, which is, again, long-term uncertainty. But generally, things are trending well because you've got productivity gains, capital spend in AI, and you've got banks printing profits and things like that. We're in a full-on bull market. If you want to dial it specifically into crypto, the crypto bear market started in October of 2025. It was a shallow bull market by crypto perspective and by Bitcoin's perspective, and it's been thus far a shallow bear market. So if you're telling me we're going to go peak the trough down 50, and then we bottomed, then that's a pretty shallow bear market. It should go down another 25, possibly 30% to really complete a full bull market. Bear market. But, again, that's the macro. How does it resolve itself? That's the real question. And so, we'll know on clarity, I guess by the end of the summer, if the Clarity Act doesn't pass or it fails in the Senate. And again, definitionally, it needs filibuster-proof 60 votes. It doesn't have that. Guys like Mike Novogratz think they're going to get there, maybe, but then the president has to accept certain guardrails on his family and himself, and he doesn't want to do that because he really likes to make money more than he likes running the presidency. So that's where we are right now. But I'm in the Lynn Alden camp where Bitcoin doesn't need a narrative. I mean, Bitcoin has its own narrative, one of the greatest pieces of technology ever invented, and Bitcoin will be with us long after you and I are gone. And, the nothing ever stops this train of ridiculous spending and fiat currency printing, and that's going to continue, and Bitcoin will be with us, and people of your ilk will own Bitcoin long after I'm gone. You're in a 4-year cycle, and Bitcoin is basically, how can I say this? It is it's been buffered by the ETF transactional activity. It's been buffered by some retail spend. It's been buffered by some institutional buying on the margin. Offset against that, there's been massive whale selling into what I think is the $100,000 number. Guys said, hey, if Bitcoin ever gets to 100,000, I'm unloading a big good piece of my bag into that. And so you're in that transition. So now as the supply tightens up, as you get to the back half of the halving cycle, I do think you go back on offense. And I do think you'll see, Bitcoin retrace through its all-time high. And that's a position like the CEO, acting CEO Richard Tang of Binance believes that. It's interesting. CZ and I have talked about this. I mean, he sees a super cycle coming. He sees Bitcoin going pretty quickly to 750. You know what I mean? But I don't.
That seems high.
I don't see it. Because in the absence of that intellectually is what's going on in AI. And so. Remember, if you said to me, okay, we're going to get clarity and the Genius Act passed in 2025, there's no Trump meme coins blowing up $4 billion worth of capital where the president and his family's earning $700 million of it. I'm saying, okay, yeah, Bitcoin's probably 125,000 right now, and it wouldn't have overly corrected into the 4-year cycle. But, it is where it's always been. It doesn't have the governmental sponsorship yet. Yes, does it have an ETF approved? Sure. But there's no clarity. The definition of the legislation is clarity. And again, for viewers and listeners outside the United States, right now, the regulation is the administrator is writing the rule as opposed to the legislator. Why is that important? Because when the administrator changes, he erases the rules that the prior administrator wrote, and he writes new ones. If it comes from the legislature, then they don't have a lot of room. This is what these are the guidelines from the legislature. This is the room. This is the window. You see what I mean? So we don't have that yet. And then maybe we get that, but I'm not an optimist on that. So if you said to me, gun to my head, is clarity going to get passed? I'm going to say no, because you need the 60 votes, and there's a lot of Democrats that won't vote for it because they hate Trump. So, you won't get it passed. And then if you don't get it passed, then this is out 5 years because Congress is not formulated, won't be architected in the way that you need to get something like this passed. So it's either now or never for the next 4 or 5 years. And, by the way, I'm not a pessimist, by the way, but I'm just telling you that this is how shit goes down in America. The country's not ready for this from a governmental perspective. They showed some leniency when Trump won in 24, but the country's really not ready for it. When Jamie Dimon has a hatchet out and he's trying to impale the forehead of founder and CEO of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong, he's trying to hit him over the head and split his forehead with the hatchet. He represents that bell curve regulator inside the government.
Scaramucci's broader message is that Bitcoin's current weakness may be less about a failure of the asset itself and more about timing, between political uncertainty, whale selling near the $100,000 level, and an unresolved regulatory environment. Bitcoin has spent much of this cycle moving sideways. Yet beneath the surface, ETF inflows, institutional demand, and tightening supply continue building pressure. His view aligns closely with Lyn Alden's thesis: Bitcoin doesn't need a new narrative. It already has one, an escape valve from an increasingly indebted monetary system. At the same time, the conversation shifts toward perhaps the biggest question facing crypto over the next decade: how much does regulation actually matter? Is the Clarity Act the catalyst that unlocks a tokenized future? Or will Bitcoin continue marching higher regardless of what Washington decides? Scaramucci's answer may surprise both bulls and bears.
So how important is clarity for Bitcoin specifically? And if it doesn't pass for 5 years, is it really like a nail in the coffin?
No, I mean, it's shitty for altcoins. Yeah, look, if clarity passes, you'll see a rally in Ripple, you'll see a rally in Solana. I sort of feel like Ethereum and Bitcoin are on their own path. If you look at tokenization, Ethereum has gotten most of the market share. If you look at the users, it's Ethereum and Solana. So to me, Ethereum and Solana, they've got their own paths. No matter what the government does, they'll be around and fairly vibrant. Bitcoin, I think, has won the intellectual debate as a digital store of value, irrespective of where the government's going to go on it. I just think that, again, these are my opinions. If it gets passed, then you're going to see the age of tokenization. But remember, you have this thing called hyperliquid. You have perpetual futures. You had an announcement by the NASDAQ, and you had an announcement by Kraken that they were merging, and they're going to do overnight trading 24/7 of the markets, and there was going to be tokenization. And then Terry Duffy came in from the CME and said, F that, we don't like that. And he's got a lot of muscle and a lot of force, and he blocked and stalled the perpetual futures market. Again, very reminiscent of what happened with Uber, and just to remind everybody, no government official wanted Uber, no city hall person wanted Uber, no taxi licensing official in any major city wanted Uber. And so they did everything they could to block Uber. But, who wanted Uber? The people. The people wanted Uber. And so the people won out, and Uber won its ability to operate in all those major cities, including London, by the way, where it was unbelievable, Alessandro, unbelievable resistance in London. So, so the real question is now, are there enough people that want Bitcoin? The people wanted Uber. The people have spoken. They got Uber. And are there enough people that want Bitcoin? And so I think that answer is maybe. I don't think it's definitely. I think it's a maybe.
And do you think there's
by the way, if you told me it was as ubiquitous as Uber, these politicians would have been steamrolled by now. They got shit scared in 2024 when Moreno beat Sherrod Brown. $240 million went into the different elections. Trump got a couple $100 million from the crypto bros to beat Kamala Harris. And people said, okay, on the margin, if I was a political consultant, but I'm not, but let's say I'm playing one on your podcast, I would tell the people that are against crypto to relax. There's no non-crypto, there's no anti-crypto voter. When Elizabeth Warren says, I'm building an army of anti-crypto voters, there's no army. It's her and Bernie Sanders.
What is the terminal state of Bitcoin, do you think? And how long does it take to get there? Are we on that path?
What is its end value? Like, what is it worth?
Yeah, not necessarily the end value. You can maybe put a figure on it if you like, but like how interwoven into society is it at that point? What once it actually fulfills the prophecy?
I think it takes a decade. I think that people that are 30 right now have to be 40. And I said when they go from 30 to 40, they will be in positions of power and positions of an ability to allocate. And then a result of which the older people, the 70-year-old right now that absolutely hates Bitcoin, will be in retirement at age 80, most likely. And so some of that incremental money that would go into gold is going to go into Bitcoin. Let's say nothing changes. Let's say that the government never accepts it. The Clarity Act never passed. We're going to have an antiquated transactional non-tokenized system because the gerontocracy has won. Okay. Let's say that that's the case. Okay. And I'll accept that. Let's say that that's the case. Okay. So then this will be half the market capitalization of gold. Tell me what gold is in 10 years. I'll tell you that's where gold's 50 trillion. Bitcoin will have a $25 trillion market cap. And if you bought it here at $1 trillion, you're going to go 25 to 1 on it. And it'll be a very healthy, position. It'll be $1.5 million, something like that. And People say, well, why is it that? Well, look at the inflation numbers and look at the rampant spending. Alessandro, there's going to be an American president in 15 years that's staring down the barrel of a $55 trillion budget deficit. You just look at the math. I mean, it's just runaway train. And so if you're telling me that that's going to happen, Bitcoin's going to have a role. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong by being too conservative. I'm saying half the market capitalization of gold in 10 years. If you get the Clarity Act passed, you start the tokenization process, you mentioned AI. If you get full agentic AI, they're not going to let the AI open bank accounts. So the AI is going to start with cryptocurrency. The AI is going to say, Alessandro, I just paid your dry cleaning bill with XYZ Satoshis. Or Alessandro, you wanted to rent that car. The robotic car is coming over to your driveway tonight at 1:00 in the morning, paid for by Bitcoin that was in my Bitcoin ledger that I wired over to the AI that was operating the Hertz rental car kiosk. And that's what's going to happen. I mean, you can't sit there and look at the situation and say, wait a minute, I'm a huge believer in AI and I'm a huge disbeliever in Bitcoin. You can't do that. They're conjoined.
If there's one takeaway from Anthony Scaramucci's analysis, it's that Bitcoin's success is no longer dependent on a single event, a single administration, or even a single country. Regulation may accelerate adoption, but it doesn't create Bitcoin's value proposition. Scarcity does. Network effects do. And perhaps most importantly, history does. Every decade seems to produce a technology that society initially resists before eventually embracing it. The internet was dismissed. Smartphones were ridiculed. Ride-sharing apps spent years battling regulators around the world. Yet consumers ultimately decided the outcome. Scaramucci sees Bitcoin following a similar path, one where demand eventually overwhelms resistance. And then there's artificial intelligence. One of the most fascinating parts of this discussion is the idea that AI itself could become a native user of digital assets. Autonomous agents won't stand in line at banks or fill out account applications. They will transact instantly, globally, and programmatically. If that future arrives, cryptocurrency may not simply coexist with AI, it may become the financial infrastructure powering it. Whether Bitcoin reaches $250,000, $750,000, or the $1 million mark Scaramucci believes is possible over the next decade, his central point remains unchanged. The train has already left the station. The only question investors must answer is whether they're standing on the platform watching it disappear into the distance or sitting comfortably on board for the journey ahead. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this perspective. Turn on post notifications so you never miss our latest updates on Bitcoin, crypto, and global macro trends. And tell us in the comments below, does Bitcoin need the Clarity Act to reach its full potential, or is its destiny already written? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.